All right, guys. Scott Stevens here. Let's try this again. It looks like there's a Facebook issue with starting a stream, or at least scheduling a stream a little bit before 10 o'clock. And since I'm in Mountain Time, we're really coming up on apparently that barrier. YouTube may have gotten out there since I see my Sky's 5D. Hello, Scott. So hello back to you over out there. Just a quick, brief wrap up on the weather. We had some wicked tornadoes down through southern Texas last weekend. Some more severe thunderstorms roll through there last night and into the Gulf coastal areas where they're really dry, especially immediately along the Gulf Coast, all the way from Brownsville, Laredo, Victoria, Texas, on up through Houston, Gulfport, Mississippi, even into Florida. Well, a big chunk of the peninsula just is dry. So these rains were somewhat beneficial to that, more in the western regions than the east. But at this point, when we're this deep into the growing season and the hot, all rain is good rain, at least when you get less than 2 inches in a little bit of time. So I'll pull up this graphic and see if we can share the screen. I'm new at this. I should have started long ago, but here I am. Here, not too late. So we'll start with the National or the Weather Prediction Center. The WPC is as who we weather folks like to call it. So they tend to highlight some of the places. This is the big storm back east. The red, obviously, the severe, and then the cool front punching all the way through Texas into the western Gulf Coast, and this affording the Texans a relief from some of that heat that was decidedly into the 90s. And then out west, just a few showers. The moisture out there this time of year is kind of skinny. It's way too early to see that monsoon coming up from the Sierra Madre into the desert Southwest. That just hasn't begun yet. We're way too early in the season for that. So what were the extremes? About 111 degrees in Death Valley, California. Kind of par for the course. And then Peter Sinks, Utah at 14 degrees. There's no growing season going on there. In fact, I remember back what was it, this past October, when Peter Sinks down to nearly 50 below for an all-time October record low. So that location in Utah is going to forever stick in my mind, kind of as an indication of where we are headed climate-wise. And over the next couple of weeks, we will get into that issue. College of DuPage has a great weather page, and if you've got great data sources that you go to regularly, share them with me in the comments, because I'm always out looking for locations that are graphics friendly and honestly air friendly, so that I can use and share with you. But here's the big low, churning over the Great Lakes states. And then I wanted to come back here because I thought this was kind of exceptional. As these thunderstorms raced along the Texas coast last night, watch these gravity waves bust out, boom, as they rage south along that Gulf of Mexico coastline down into Mexico. That's really kind of impressive. And when you see those emanating from thunderstorms, there's a lot of oomph behind them. This is the slightly cooler weather coming into the west. And again, kind of weak. This is about an 18-hour satellite loop, so we'll see that moisture gradually leak into the west. Some of the greener tops indicating the potential, at least for some showers under there, but nothing terribly measurable, and isolated thunderstorms at best with this particular beast. Numerically modeling, or the forecast models that are issued pretty much every 6 hours, they'll run them out 15 plus days. And so I still want to get in front of that green screen back there and then walk in front of this like I used to do at the station. But what we're looking at is this deep low churning right here. This guy, that's our baby as it churns. So that'll keep the east rather cool. Some nice fresh breezes on the backside of that as we begin into the first week of May through Mother's Day. And then in this area, we're going to watch for a northerly flow settle in behind this pretty wave out west all during this, and on that shore flow. No heat, probably a little bit of the foggy in the coastal areas in the mornings, but that's kind of to be expected this time of year. But this deep North Pacific low remains in place. That keeps the jet stream a bit farther south than usual. And considering this is one of the driest areas in the country, the Northern California, Southern Oregon coastline, that increased chances for showers has got to be welcome. But it's this little wave dropping south. We're out almost 198 hours. So that takes us into Friday next, where right in there's your date stamp right there. Going to bring us some cold. And so after almost what has been a very timid winter, we're getting some cross-polar flow, but that's not healthy. No, that's not healthy at all when we get into growing season and the plants. Off to the radar, there's a storm slowly progressing with the nice rains and thunderstorms ahead of it, and then we have. I want to look at the drought. So we began last winter or last summer with almost no drought throughout the West, and what was an abysmal winter season, and actually an almost completely absent summer monsoonal season, punctuated by a fairly wet November, December, and then the rains literally beginning of February turned off. The snowpacks out west were in great shape, looked like they were going to build strongly through the end of the snow season, which would have been end of April, but it just didn't happen. The snows ended, and there are many locations in California through the month of February that got nothing. And so when you are a rancher or need vegetation to raise your livestock on, we saw an early growth because there wasn't any or there was minimal soil moisture. They just really didn't get a lot of biomass for the season. So they're coming into the summer in a rather precarious situation. The mountain packs are good, the reservoir situations are in good shape, but the rangeland is not so good for orchards, and for cattle and even for grazing up in the mountains. So the Southern Oregon's is hurting as well, as is the Four Corners region. And then this is what we did get a little relief from down here today, and last night was that action. So what we'd like to look at, I guess we can come into here and this lovely weather tap, or not weather tap, but weather underground. And maybe it's been too long since I've had this map active, but we saw some good 1, 2, even 3-inch rainfalls in along this area from New Orleans back down towards about Victoria, Texas, where the drought is really intense. And that was really on the edge of some of the good rains. It got about 1.5 inches. So yeah, that's pretty good. Let's hit a few tweets, some of the things today. Um, and then I want, just because I've got a bunch of chemtrail fans out there, and I'm kind of one of them. That's what brought me into all this. Otherwise, I'd probably still be on TV 15 years later. Is that when we begin to see these trails, and because we've got a shelter place in effect, we're seeing 90% fewer aircraft in the skies right now, meaning planes that are leaving trails are depositing them where trails are meteorologically relevant. And in this particular instance, where we had a plane go through and we saw the trail spread out, you can see how it began to fan out here and then peel away this way. And then something happened here to have the trail kind of get literally compressed. It's like running up against a barrier in the atmosphere, and the components of the trail, the dust, the particles, whatever you want to call it, all piled up and got very bright in this location. And then we just happened to have another plane come along and mark the edge of where the previous one is laid out. So path here, it's fairly straight, and then off to the side. And then this is just kind of realigning the resonance of the vibration that the first plane revealed. So there's an aspect of weather engineering in this. And then my opinion is that these guys are the front line. They'll tell you or reveal exactly where they're paying attention to, whether it's scalar, electromagnetic, whether it's HARP, whether it's etheric or orgone engineering. There are numerous tools, and they tend to use them all. Some pretty cool Mamadas clouds caught by time lapse last night just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's turbulence in the Mamadas, in the thunderhead. And you've got the sun setting in the west, and then they're rolling overhead. And with all the ring cameras and nest cameras and just weather time lapses out there, we're getting a lot of pretty cool time lapse video that ends up on the Twitter sphere. Um, Again, I think we're down under in this particular instance. Oh yeah, this is Australia, just going through some cool right now, with lots of chilly weather down in that direction, as they are probably going to feel the effects of the solar minimum. Our growing seasons are beginning to shorten up. Our average temperatures may, on the whole, be close to normal or even above. But it's these frosts. If you get an early frost or a late spring frost, it shortens the growing season, and that's the risk for the productivity. And I've said for years that geoengineering has the impact of increasing flooding, increasing drought, increasing heat, increasing cold. But what it does is it minimizes the productivity of the land, of the people, of the farms. And that's the damage that it does, is it decreases humanity and the planet's productivity. This was all the lightning as it kind of raced south across the Gulf Coast. It must have been quite a show. I would have honestly, I love thunderstorms. I would have enjoyed seeing that. In another instance where today marks the 15th day in a row, the daily average temperature was below normal for Bridgeport, Connecticut. Same for Hartford. Today's maximum temperature of 51, 11 degrees below normal. The last time we had this long a stretch was back in 2015 from January 26 to March 3, where they had 37 consecutive days with below normal temperatures. And we're seeing that into spring. And here's an illustration of some of the colder temperatures that are going to be residing over the eastern states. Another uh, GIF of these thunderstorms that rolled south last night. Another instance of cold maximum temperatures. This streak is over after 219 consecutive days with maximum temperatures below 20 Celsius. Calgary, so that is exactly 68 Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature finally broached that 20 degrees Celsius mark. This was the all-time record before that 219-day run ended. So they have not been above 68 degrees in Calgary or 20 Celsius since 23 September last fall. And as we saw the cold and the snows begin so early in the Canadian prairies, down into the Dakotas and Nebraska and Montana, there's satellite images literally showing that North Dakota, 15% of the corn crop was just left in the field. The farmers had to abandon it because the cold and the moisture just wouldn't allow them to harvest it. So that was ultimately a problem. This was an interesting story where they've actually found frequencies at which they can use lasers to tunnel through clouds. And obstinately, this was to facilitate data transmission at very, very high rates that they can literally open a tunnel in the atmosphere, creating a plasma and a spin, and then spiral an opening that they can transmit data. But they have to clear the cloud, so they've got line of sight from transmitter to receiver to send the data. So it's another instance of where they can begin to deploy this technology, if they haven't already, to play with cloud cover, to seed clouds, to form clouds, or to clear them away. And they probably have other far less energy intensive methods to do this. This is just my likes from today out on Twitter at weatherwars.info. And then, why not? Let's end that with a little skywriting, because that's why we're all here. All right, guys, a little something for today. I'll keep it sort of brief, and we'll see you tomorrow. See if we've got any interesting stories you want to share, sources, so forth and so on. And let's just make this a regular occurrence. It's coming up on a 10 o'clock Mountain, which is just about the time the 10 o'clock news would start. So I'm used to this cycle. All right, guys, see you later. Keep looking up. End that broadcast.